What is going on, everyone? Welcome into our next divisional draft grades video, where we're going to be taking a look back at the draft, talking about who maximized the picks that they had, maybe who stole some really great players, maybe perhaps based on my own evaluations who reached a little bit, or maybe passed on who I think will be better options at the next level. But ultimately just taking a look as well at who these players are, how they fit in with their new teams, and what I think they might be at the next level. I do encourage you to take a look in the description below. I have a new grading criteria for this, really trying to amp up the consistency and transparency with how I come up with these grades. While you're down there, if you could throw a like on the video, I really appreciate it. It takes just a second. It's a meaningful way to support my channel. Also, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of these draft grades videos. And next up, we have my deep dive series coming in just a few weeks. Going to work throughout the entire summer, previewing every NFL team in depth. I think it's the best thing I have to offer on this channel. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure you're subscribed, and let's get into it. And we're going to start the AFC South off with, man, one of the most fun drafts I remember in a long time. And I just praised the Cardinals draft as maybe being the best draft this year because they got all of those picks from the Texans. And believe me, we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But if you want to just look at the actual draft and the players that the team ended up taking, this is ridiculous what the Colts came away with. Chris Ballard, welcome back. It's been a few years, but it's good to have you back, my friend. I really think this is going to be a franchise-altering draft. And a big part of that, of course, is the quarterback at the top of the board, but that's certainly not all we're going to talk about here. Man, let's have some fun because this thing is worth celebrating. So Anthony Richardson goes 4th overall. And, you know, ever since I made that video on Anthony Richardson back in January, it was really the first draft video that I made. If you are a Colts fan and you're new and you haven't seen my video on Anthony Richardson, I'll put that link in the description below. I really can't recommend it enough. I put a lot of time and effort into it, and it's probably the best video I made this draft season. So, like, if you want to watch some Richardson film and get a good idea of, like, you know, some of his strengths and weaknesses and some of the stuff that he's going to have to grow with at the next level, like, again, please check it out. But how can you fault a team for aiming for this kind of upside at the quarterback position? I mean, the second he got drafted last Thursday night, I truly believe he immediately became the most physically talented quarterback that has ever been in the NFL. And whether it's in, you know, September or in 2024 when he finally plays, he will be the most physically gifted quarterback to ever play in the NFL. The testing numbers speak for itself, but you watch him on the field just embarrassing SEC defenses with his legs. That's one thing, right? He has legitimate, like, Lamar Jackson athleticism in Cam Newton's body. You know, I'm not going to say, you know, I will say I think he's about as athletic as Lamar and Michael Vick, but he's 30 pounds bigger, right? And then he has a stupid strong arm with a rapid release. Like, it's not just the athleticism with him. The arm talent is absolutely elite as well. So that is going to tell you, like, theoretically, he has the highest upside that maybe any quarterback ever has. Now, the mental side of things is obviously such a big part of upside, and why upside is a weird conversation for quarterback, right? Tom Brady, one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play. So, like, it's going to come down to how much he can develop his ability to get through progressions, make the right decisions. I think he does need to improve his touch and accuracy in certain spots, and that's going to be a part of the development plan here in Indianapolis. But, man, you got to love him getting to work with Shane Steichen, who did all of that incredible work with Jalen Hurts, who's not as physically talented as Anthony Richardson, let alone all of the, like, you know, really, helping a guy along with working on some of those fundamentals, but just helping him schematically as well with a scheme that Steichen's going to be able to copy and paste here in Indianapolis what he did in Philadelphia. He even has the same backup quarterback in Gardner Minshew if they want to start Gardner for a few weeks or however long it may be that they want to make sure Richardson is ready to go. But the read option stuff, helping him out with an incredible run game with Jonathan Taylor and using Anthony Richardson as a numbers advantage. You know, there's certain systems that wouldn't be as comfortable just naturally involving him in the run game, right? Like, I look at, like, like Justin Fields in Chicago, they made it work, but with Luke Getsy's offense, that was never like something that was just naturally a part of the playbook. It's going to be with Shane Steichen's offense, RPOs, simplifying first reads for him. It really couldn't be a better scheme for Anthony Richardson to come in and potentially have success right away. So I love that, man. The upside is insane. I love them going for it. I think they probably did debate between him and Will Levis ultimately, and maybe if Stroud was here, they would have gone with Stroud. But I love the pick, man. It's going to be so fun. But it does not stop there. Honestly, like outside of a couple day 3 picks, Julius Brents was the other one that was like, it's a pretty good pick. It's not like insane, but that just speaks volumes about how insane this draft was, because Julius Brents in the second round totally checks out. I had a second to a third round grade on him, maybe like a tiny touch earlier than I would have drafted him if I'm being like insanely critical, but he really fits the system, right? With Julius Brents, I really felt like he had to go to a cover 3 heavy team, and he's going to Gus Bradley's defense, who's the most cover 3 heavy team in the league. So he's going to be a day 1 starter. They desperately needed corners. I can't even really fault this, man. Like, I'm not going to fault this. I'm giving it an A. I don't know if his upside is insane, but I do think he's going to be a quality starter for them, and was a really good pick. But honestly, in my mind, Josh Downs was the better player in the second round. This was kind of a ring the bell moment for me around later, because I have so consistently put Josh Downs to the Indianapolis Colts as a real missing piece for this offense, man. It's one of my favorite picks in the entire draft. Not only is it a steal, I actually had a late first, early second round on Josh Downs, and I'll be bold enough to say, like, I don't think there is a massive difference between Jackson Smith-Njigba and Josh Downs as prospects. You can go back to my receiver rankings and see kind of a little bit more about why I feel that way, but seriously, dude, you have your outside guys, right? You got Pittman, who will play in the slot a little bit, but him and Pierce, you got your tight ends. You needed a quick-hitting, juiced-up athlete to really run this system. You need a guy that you can run those slants to, get some more, like, quick production after the catch. Man, this is going to be so fun with Josh Downs here. I think it's going to be really productive, really the second Anthony Richardson gets on the field, because that area of the field opens up in this offense. It really does. That short to intermediate, middle and flat area is where he thrives. Ridiculous red zone route runner. It reminds me a lot of Hunter Renfrow in just his creativity to get open down in that area too. So to me, they totally stole Josh Downs here in the third round. And, man, it keeps going. You get to day 3. Blake Freeland, right out the gate in the 4th, like developmental upside. I had a 4th to a 5th round grade on him. They need to make sure they can hit on that left tackle spot. And, I really didn't like Blake Freeland's tape. His eval, liking him at all, is strictly based on his workout. He's 6'8". He really struggles to get natural leverage. I don't think he's an instinctive blocker. Like, I don't think he understands leverage and how to use his hands. In fact, I'm slightly more optimistic just on a gut feeling that Jake Witt in the 7th round has just as good of a chance as Blake Freeland working out. We'll talk about Jake Witt in a little bit. I'm talking down on this pick, but I think the process is sound to get a guy with that freaky athleticism for a team that's done a good job developing offensive linemen, and he's going to have a good opportunity to potentially work out here. So we'll see. A lot of people really liked Blake Freeland. To me, it was all about the workout, and I get that. That's why I give it a good pick, but I am skeptical. But, dude, Adebawore, how many teams have we been sitting here saying, why did you not take Adebawore at the end of the second round or the early third round? And for the Colts to get him here, who's a perfect scheme fit as that bigger-bodied edge on early downs, that interior rusher on later downs when you want to take Grover Stewart off the field. He's going to be the Michael Bennett role in Gus Bradley's defense. He is an insane interior pass rusher, or at least he showed to be at the Senior Bowl. Northwestern just didn't let him loose. I tweeted this, and I didn't even think about it. I mean, I tweeted it before the Colts got him, but it's going to be a fun AFC South conversation to have here. Someone needs to explain Adebawore in the 4th round versus Trayvon Walker first overall in the draft to me like I'm an 8-year-old. As prospects, I see those two guys as very similar guys coming out. Walker was a little bit bigger, was more of an edge guy, certainly a higher grade, and I understand him going higher than Adebawore, but like I mean, come on, this is an absurd steal. I don't know what this is about. I don't think it's off field. Everyone that I've talked to from Northwestern is like, this guy's a great dude. I don't think it's medicals. I haven't heard anything about that. I think it's just because he's a tweener and was not super productive at Northwestern. Maybe there's some risk there, but gosh, in the 4th round, there's no more risk involved. This was one of the best picks in the entire draft, next to Josh Downs. And then they get Darius Rush in the 5th round. I had a 3rd round grade on Darius Rush. I think he's right behind Julius Brents as a prospect. Brent's certainly a higher floor, Rush a higher upside. You know, Rush's tape was really hit or miss, but when you look into his background, you start to like him a lot more. You know, he converted from receiver at South Carolina. He's only been playing corner for a few years. So you can understand why his reaction time and his zone coverage ability is just not up to speed yet. But he really killed the pre-draft process. You know, to me, before the pre-draft, he was a 5th round guy. But you look at how he performed at the Senior Bowl, where he got to really just play tight man-to-man coverage, show off his athletic ability, show his ability to get his head around and find the football when the ball's in the air, good ball skills. And then he comes out and runs a 4.35, 4.36. Like, he's totally still getting better. And to get him in the 5th round, someone with legit starter traits, he's got size, strength, speed. I didn't have a huge gap between Darius Rush and Cam Smith out of South Carolina. So to me, that's a certified steal in the 5th round. You might have a pair of starters in this draft at the cornerback position. You might have a trio of starters with another steal they got later. They take Daniel Scott in the middle of the 5th round. I had him as a 4th round guy. I think it's a great pick, man. You got Julian Blackmon on the last year of his deal. Daniel Scott was a productive player at California. Rangy coverage skills, an insane athlete. And we were joking before day 3 of the draft with the YouTube comments. We were like, are you guys ready for Chris Ballard to just take a bunch of RAS guys? And that's literally all they're doing, except for one guy, Jalen Jones, that I still am excited to talk about. But these guys are all freak athletes. Daniel Scott has starter traits as a safety, and I really think if you can improve his tackling consistency and get him a little bit more comfortable rotating down into the box, he could overtake Julian Blackmon if it doesn't click this year. And I know Colts fans love Julian Blackmon, and I loved him coming out too, but the last couple of years just have not been great for him. I think Daniel Scott next to Nick Cross could be like one of the most athletic safety duos in the league. So I like that pick quite a bit. I think he has a good chance to become a starter for them. And then, dart throw on Will Mallory. A lot of hype for him after he comes out and runs a fast 40. I don't really see it with him. I get the gamble on athleticism. I don't think it's a great opportunity here, but it's good value at the end of the 5th round. So, maybe he can turn into a little bit more of a separator than someone like Jelani Woods, and you can have a nice kind of 1-2 punch there long term. I like the Evan Hull pick as a kind of scat back, really smooth athleticism out of the backfield. So I think he makes sense as a potential role player next to Jonathan Taylor. Titus Leo out of Wagner, I didn't get to his tape, but a developmental edge there at the end of the 6th round. But man, Jalen Jones out of Texas A&M. I was getting through all these day 3 corners in my evaluations, right? And it's even like a Darius Rush and, the Jacorian Bennett's and the Mekhi Blackmons of the world, where they're just not technically sound. A receiver will, have his in cut on a dig, or he'll put on a little shake on a double move. And a lot of these corners, they're lacking that route squeeze, the anticipation to really know what's coming and stay stride for stride. And Darius Rush, he didn't test like those guys we just named, not even close. But his tape was so much better. I really liked his tape, and I'm higher on this guy. And I love, I talked about this with the Seahawks drafting Devon Witherspoon. I love when teams have a kind of like, they have their criteria for what they want to do. And obviously the Colts are like, we want a bunch of freaking athletes. Well, you get to the 7th round, and it's like, they're still doing their homework on these guys. Yeah, Jalen Jones probably wouldn't have been ideal for them in the 4th, 5th round, because they want guys that are running in the 4.3s, check a bunch of athletic, boxes. That's not Jalen Jones. He's just a really smart, sound football player, declaring out of Texas A&M as a true junior. Like, he's still young and getting better. Like, he's a better player right now than Darius Rush is. And I think he's right in line with how good Julius Brents is right now. So if you need to wait, if you need a guy that can play right away and you're waiting on Darius Rush to develop, or if Darius Rush never develops, man, I think they stole insane value in Jalen Jones. I think he could also be a guy that converts to safety as well because he's such a smart football player. I could just be wrong about him, and I overrated his tape, but to me, he should have gone way sooner than this. Jake Witt, I mentioned earlier, really fun story. This guy, was a basketball player like in 2018, went to some school, it didn't work out. He transferred to Northern Michigan as a student, and then he walked on the team in 2020, but the season got canceled for COVID. He was a tight end at first because he was just this athlete that was like, I'm really athletic, let me try football. 2021, midway through the year, he switches from tight end to tackle. And then 2022, last year, was his first year ever playing tackle, and he was second team all-conference. Insane athletic testing ability, checks every measurable. Honestly, I think he's right in line with Blake Freeland as a developmental super athlete. So in the middle of the 7th round, I love it. And we haven't done this for a lot of guys because, a lot of UDFAs are still 6th round guys. There's not a ton of 4th, 5th round grades for me that ended up as UDFAs, but getting Emil Ekiyor in the 4th round or as an undrafted free agent, he was the first guy that got announced. Clearly the Colts were like, holy hell, how is this guy still there? I had a 4th round grade on him. I think he can compete for starting guard work right away as an undrafted free agent. Out of Alabama, good tape, not a insanely strong player, not an insane athlete, but has a mean stroke in the run game and not a bad pass protector. Absolutely, dude. The Colts need a little bit of help at guard. This is an absurd draft. I wish I could give a higher grade than an A+, because what they did with what they had is a memorable haul, and I'm so excited. This makes up for a couple of mid drafts the last couple of years, honestly, man. Welcome back, Chris Ballard. Super fun. I'm going to be cheering for this team, man. There's so many players in this draft that I love, and I'm excited to see this really, could potentially come together quicker than you may have expected after getting Anthony Richardson and then getting a haul like this. This show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy football. The moment this draft is complete, Best Ball Mania 4 goes live, and it is the biggest fantasy football competition of all time. Not even kidding. It's only $25 to enter for your shot at $15 million in total prizes and a first place prize of $3 million. You won't want to miss out on this action. The best part is, because it's best ball format, all you have to do is draft your teams, which you can do at home on your phone thanks to the amazing Underdog app. In Best Ball Mania, you join the tournament, draft your team as you would in any normal fantasy football league, and your lineup is locked in once the draft is complete. No waivers, no trades. That's right, it is set it and forget it until it's time to collect your cash. Underdog automatically optimizes your lineup weekly to create the highest scoring option. What are you waiting for? Get signed up at UnderdogFantasy.com or via the App Store with promo code TFG, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code TFG for your shot at $15 million inside Best Ball Mania 4. But then we got to talk about the Houston Texans, who I was raving about on draft night, right? But when you learn about what they gave up to go up for Will Anderson, this very quickly, the excitement about this really quickly wore off for me. And I get what they did. Taking CJ Stroud, taking Will Anderson. They wanted the identity of their offense with their quarterback, the identity of their defense with their edge player. They've been in the gutter for so long. I get, really feeling truly desperate to go get these two players. And I can't entirely fault it, but they overpaid way too much to make this happen. They just did, man. They gave up the 33rd pick in this draft. They gave up, obviously, the 12th pick in this draft. They gave up their first round pick next year and their third round pick next year. They got fleeced. They really did. This is a team that, this reeks of desperation. I like a lot of the stuff they've done. I've been singing their praises, and there's a chance that they're not picking in the top 5 next year, but I think there's a better chance that they are. And as much as I love Will Anderson, I can't justify that, man. If that's what you're going to do, dude, just wait on the quarterback, honestly, man. take Will Anderson at 2. I didn't think there was a huge gap between CJ Stroud and Will Levis. And if you don't take Stroud there, who knows what happens, right? Who knows if Richardson and Levis start to fall. It's too much to give up on, man. It's going to impact their draft grade. Individually, I think Stroud with the second pick is totally fine. He was my number 2 QB. I think he's a day 1 starter and is going to be a really good quarterback in the NFL. He reminds me a lot of Dak Prescott. My original comp was Jared Goff with wheels. I'll shout out long-term patron Connor Lee was like, isn't that just Dak Prescott? And I'm like, yes, it is. I think the accuracy, the decision-making, very similar to a guy like Dak. The creativity, the pocket presence, the ability to consistently sense when pressure is or isn't there. I question that with CJ Stroud. And that's why I think there's a more limited upside there. Taking that player at 2 is fine. But if you are the Texans and you have 2 first-round picks next year, there's still other quarterbacks. Like honestly, man, they could have had Will Levis at 12. I'd much rather just keep pick 33, keep my first-round pick next year, give me Levis at 12. I know they didn't know that at the time, but man, you get the point. They gave up way too much, and that's putting so much pressure on a quarterback in CJ Stroud that I don't think has Bryce Young's upside. I don't think he has Anthony Richardson's upside even. His floor is certainly higher than Richardson, but gosh, they basically have to be a 8 or a 9 win team this year to not look like idiots for giving a top 5 pick to the Cardinals for this. That's really what this comes down to, and that's a huge risk to take. Now, I get it. They've been really in the gutter. Like I said, they felt like they needed to make this move, and it is exciting for Texans fans. So if you can, if you're sitting here listening to me say all that and you're still like, I don't care. We got our quarterback. We got the best defensive player in the draft. I don't really care about the future picks that we gave up. I think you should be a little bit more cautious than that, but I kind of understand, right? It's been a rough couple years, and they're going to be ready to compete now. So with that said, these individual picks grade out as an A, but the trade up is a D for me. I just can't get behind how much they gave up. Now, Will Anderson, what I would have done is just taken Will Anderson at 12 and let the quarterback thing come to you a little bit more. Even if that was moving up to 6 with Detroit, right? You wouldn't have had to give up as much. We saw what Arizona only had to give up that 33rd pick to move from, 12 to 6. Anyway, Will Anderson's going to be super fun here. DeMeco Ryans gets his Alabama guy. Really proud of them for not taking Tyree Wilson. That was kind of a scare pre-draft for Texans fans. So at least they took Will Anderson. They didn't take Tyree Wilson, which I think would have been a mistake. Anderson's awesome. I love his power. I think he's only going to get better as a technique guy. They used him so much as that 4-eye at Alabama. And Nick Saban, I love you, but come on, Will Anderson could have done so much more for that defense if they let him out in a wide 9 and let him really get after the quarterback. And that's what he's going to be able to do for the Texans. So, yeah, interesting strategy. We've talking about it. Honestly, Juice Scruggs at the end of the second round, it's just way too early, man. It is. I didn't hate Juice Scruggs' tape. Nobody thought he was a second-round player. Nobody. And I don't think anybody in the NFL did either. I don't know if they really liked Luke Whippler and got late news that he has medical red flags, because that's the only thing that can really explain Luke Whippler falling to the 7th round. But I just don't think you had to panic and take Juice Scruggs with the second-round pick. He's just lacks play strength. He wasn't some dominant center at Penn State. I get he's got smooth get off. He blocks wide zone really well. I don't think he's going to be a complete waste of a pick. That's why he's a D as opposed to an F, even though I think this is a massive reach. And he's got an opportunity to probably start now because they overdrafted him. So we'll see. I could be wrong there, but that just felt way too early. There were so many other man, you already gave up all that draft capital, and now you're taking, in my opinion, a mid day 3 player with a second round pick when there's awesome players available. I don't like that one bit. They take Tank Dell at the top of the 3rd round. Look, I love Tank Dell. I love the hometown connection. This reminds me a lot of when the Dallas Cowboys drafted their hometown kid in Damarian Overshown, and the end result was they let Josh Downs go to the Colts. I think that's going to be a pretty painful thing to swallow. If you want that gadgety playmaker type, I think there's nothing wrong with taking Tank Dell in the third round, but when Josh Downs is there, I think they're going to regret that. So he's really small, but he's an incredible route runner. I like the way he fits here. I think he has a chance of being successful, but I got to knock them for taking him over, Josh Downs. And I think that was a hometown bias type of deal there, and I can't get behind that. You get into day 3. Pretty good day 3. Dylan Horton was kind of one of my guys in this draft. Not someone that got a lot of buzz, not someone with a ton of upside or anything, but talk about all of these edge players that were forced to play, inside the tackles and in these 3-3-5 system that just set them up for failure. Dylan Horton was at the top of that list at TCU. He did a lot of dirty work, defended the run pretty well, given how hard his job was to take on double teams from that spot. And I love how he fits as a early down third guy, and to get that at the top of the 4th round, I think is just a really solid pick. Henry To'oTo'o in the 5th round. I was not a big To'oTo'o guy, but he ends up falling to the end of the 5th round. I think you get yourself a good backup linebacker at that point, a team leader. So no issues with that. You're pairing him now back with Christian. God, why do I always struggle with his name? Christian Harris out of Alabama. So you're repairing those guys together. That's fun. Jarrett Patterson, I think, is just a backup. Played a couple of positions on Notre Dame's O-line, but a physically limited player. Xavier Hutchinson, pretty good pick there at the end of the 6th round. Honestly, I had an early day 3 grade on him. I think he's a really solid 4th or 5th wide receiver. Really tough dude. He's going to do a lot of dirty work. I feel pretty good saying he's going to play special teams. If a guy goes down, I think he can kind of fill in, slot, outside, do a little bit of everything, and hang around for his rookie contract there. And then I like how Brandon Hill fits here a lot. Really high upside, undersized safety. Played slot corner at Pittsburgh, but kind of a seamless spot for him to learn from Jimmy Ward and at this point Jalen Petrie, both guys who have been converted slot corners to safety in their past. Hill has the tools to be a starter in the NFL at 4.44 40, physical player. I think that slot experience is going to help him. And, I think this is like a perfect landing spot. I think this was a really savvy pick by the Texans. Certainly no guarantee at the end of the 7th round, but I think they got a potential starter and replacement for Jimmy Ward, who's on a 2-year contract in 2025, right? So, really, outside of Juice Scruggs, it was a pretty damn good draft, right? But that trade up was way too much. It just was. If you're handing the 5th pick, or God forbid this is a top 3 pick, which is certainly not out of the question. We talked about this with the Cardinals. You got Caleb Williams, who we feel is a potential elite. I'm not going to quite say the next Mahomes, but it's getting there, man. Tank for Caleb is a real thing, not in a tank for Tua kind of way either. You also feel good about what Drake May has shown, and man, Marvin Harrison as well looks like he's going to be a generational type of receiver prospect. If you're giving up that, you're giving up the 12th pick, you're giving up the 33rd pick this year, which is basically another first, and what could be another high 3rd round pick next year to the Cardinals. And even if they took Anthony Richardson, and Texans fans are going to fucking hate that I say this, but if you took Anthony Richardson, I could at least be you think he can be a Mahomes level quarterback. You think he can be a tier 2 guy even. Personally, I don't think CJ Stroud is that guy. I think their options, whether it was in this draft or in future drafts, to still get a guy like CJ Stroud, who's a really good 1st round level quarterback prospect. I don't think he's a franchise-altering quarterback, and I just think another opportunity would have been there. He could have just taken Will Anderson at 2 and been a little bit more patient with this thing. It reeked of desperation to me, and I have to be critical of that, even if this is going to get them on the right track and they're going to be a more competitive team. So a really tough draft to grade. I understand if you're excited about this if you're a Texans fan, but I also understand if you're kind of pissed if you're a Texans fan. At least give them the Browns pick next year and not the Texans pick. And I know that's tough to swallow because Deshaun's there and all that, but whew. All right, let's move on. The Jacksonville Jaguars, another draft that I have some criticisms of. Anton Harrison, kind of by my criteria, is going to get an A. I think it's a really good pick. I'm never going to fault a team for investing in the offensive line when you have a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence. The fact that Cam Robinson is suspended for PEDs for the first 6 games of the season definitely makes me feel even better about this pick because, they are going for it, right? They really feel like they can take that next step this year, take another leap, and be a true Super Bowl team. 6 weeks without your left tackle is tough. And I think that could be a really good situation where, it's almost forcing their hand to be a little bit more honest about who Cam Robinson is. I think Cam Robinson's a fine left tackle. He's okay. I think Anton Harrison certainly has better upside there. And it could be a deal where, okay, you are now playing Anton Harrison at left tackle right away. And if he's playing well, I think it'd be pretty illogical for Cam Robinson to come back and then them to shake things up, right? Like if Cam Robinson was just their day one starter at left tackle and they were trying to Anton Harrison at right tackle, and you know what I'm saying? Like they never really would have been forced their hand to get Cam Robinson out of that spot. I think Cam Robinson as a right tackle could be proportionally better relative to the left tackles in the league. You also have Walker Little there. So if Walker Little's playing really well at right tackle, which I love giving him an opportunity as well, then it's like, okay, Cam, you're our guard. And I fucking love that. Like, dude, Cam Robinson could be a all-pro kind of guard. Tackle is a little bit limited in his foot speed and all that, but man, I don't know if this was intentional for them, but I believe in Walker Little. I believe in Anton Harrison, and I believe in Greg Robinson as a guard. I know it's kind of a roundabout way of potentially shaping this up into the high-end offensive line it could be, but if it plays out that way, and it's no guarantee it does, but if it plays out that way, I think this is going to be an excellent pick. Now, if he struggles a little bit left tackle, they put in Greg Robinson, then it gets a little bit shaky. It's like, all right, Walker Little's a guard, Anton Harrison's a guard. What are we doing a little bit more? It's still a good pick, but it's not quite as exciting. Now, I've got to shred them for this Brenton Strange pick, you guys. There was no reason to make this pick. It's a horrible selection. It really is. Brenton Strange is Richard Rodgers. He's a big-bodied guy. He tries to block. He has some room to improve in that department. I get that they see him as an inline guy as a complement to Evan Ingram. If you want that, you had Tucker Kraft available. I think he's a much better version of this player. And you could have taken a chance on Darnell Washington. Now, I get the injuries are there, and maybe that scared him off. But, dude, Tucker Kraft was there. If you didn't want to take one of those guys, just wait. There are so many good players at other positions that they could have gone with instead of a mid-blocking inline tight end that is never going to be a focal point of the offense or a guy that gets a lot of snaps. I could not be any lower on this draft pick. I don't get it. I don't get the evaluation. He's not an exciting player. He's a good lead blocker with his hand in the dirt. He's an okay blocker. What are you doing taking that guy in the end of the second round, Jacksonville? I do not understand it. And I think Tank Bigsby was a pretty bad pick at the end of the third round, too. If you had to go running back here, which I don't think you did, you have ETN, JaMychal Hasty. They signed D'Ernest Johnston, which was like a good value signing. For one, I think this was early on Tank Bigsby. Number two, if you felt like you wanted a speedy back, which you don't, you have ETN and JaMychal Hasty. Like, I'd rather you go with Roschon Johnson or, a bigger back if you have to draft a running back here. But if you felt like you wanted to go Tank Bigsby, I disagree with the evaluation. I think Israel Abanikanda out of Pittsburgh is a much better version of this kind of straight line speed slasher type of back, but I don't think Tank Bigsby is a better player than JaMychal Hasty, not right away. I mean, I could just be wrong about the evaluation, but I don't think you need 3 of these guys in Jacksonville. They're not even a true wide zone offense, right? Like, I think they could have really benefited from a guy like Roschon Johnson or all the way down the board. It goes in the 7th round. You've got DeWayne McBride. Like, I don't think this was a good pick. I think it was a reach. I don't think he's going to have much of a role on that team. 4th round, they take Ventrell Miller. I love Ventrell. I think he's a good pick. I think he's a guy that is like a really good backup. I even compared him to Shaq Quarterman was my low-end comp, so you can kind of get that replacement there. They don't need him, but it's a 4th round. I think they probably liked him a lot, and I'm not going to be critical of that, but I'm a little bit disappointed with the landing spot because, I would have loved to see him go to, like, the Rams or the Bucks where, like, he has a good chance to maybe actually play. they're freaking loaded at linebacker in Jacksonville. And yeah, I mean, it just kind of is what it is. I think you probably could have gone with a different position, but still a good pick. Tyler Lacey, I had a 6th round to a priority free agent grade on him. I think he's a reach. I don't see him returning much value here. I think he is a dime a dozen tweener type. He defends the run well from the edge, but I don't think he's going to hold up on the inside very well. I don't love his pass rushing, so I hope I'm wrong about him, but I didn't see it there. Yasir Abdullah is an interesting player. He's kind of that hybrid outside backer. I see how he fits in their system. They love to run games and stunts up front. I think he's going to be an on-the-ball, early down linebacker, a role player. Maybe he develops into something more than that, but I see what they see in him. He's a really special athlete that was used in a weird system at Louisville, but that system's kind of similar to what they do in Jacksonville with this scheme, so they could probably manufacture some of that pass rush production just like Louisville did. I felt like every other snap at Louisville, Yasir Abdullah was weaving and bobbing and warping through a different gap on a stunt. So I do think they watched his tape and they're like, yeah, we can do that with him in our scheme. So I get it. Now, this is where they stole some value. Like if you take Antonio Johnson, and I don't grade drafts like this, but it does help, obviously. If you just take Antonio Johnson and Parker Washington and put them where Brenton Strange and Tank Bigsby went, I like this draft a lot more. Pretty good pro comp for me from Antonio Johnson because I had a Rayshon Jenkins comp on him. I think he's going to work out here. I really do. He was asked to play slot corner at Texas A&M, and I always thought that was stupid. He's like Rayshon Jenkins. He's kind of a towering, high-hipped, stiff north and south athlete, but he's got good speed. I think he anticipates routes well, and I think with a little bit of growth could actually be a pretty good starting safety. So like, you know, him and Andre Sisco, I think can be a good duo. Both guys that can play down in the box, but can also rotate up and play free safety as well. So I really like this pick. I thought that was a certified steal, man. I thought he was an end of the second, early third round guy. And then they take an actual good player out of Penn State in Parker Washington in the 6th round. It's becoming a bit of a crowded room, but to me, Parker was like a poor man's Jackson Smith-Njigba, really efficient slot receiver, really tough guy catching balls over the middle of the field, decent route runner, not the best athlete, not the best separator, but as a 4th wide receiver, a backup to Christian Kirk in the slot, I think he's going to be a really nice player to have around there. And then some solid picks after that. A couple of defensive backs that I think they see as a couple dart throws at slot corner. Christian Braswell and Eric Hallett, who's a little bit undersized for safety. Could be a safety, but could be in a competition for slot corner, which is a huge need for them. Like, man, I wish they would have taken Clark Phillips instead of Tank Bigsby in the 3rd round or Brenton Strange in the 2nd. That's why you don't just say, oh, just put Antonio Johnson and Parker Washington in the 2nd, 3rd rounds. Like, no, it didn't work like that. Like, they had value that they could have had in the 2nd, 3rd round that they couldn't have had later in the draft. So clearly they're looking for someone to kind of be a 6th round gem as a slot corner. I didn't get to either of those guys' tapes, so maybe they saw something in those guys. Both good athletes, so I think it's sound process. They took Cooper Hodges out of App State in the 7th round. Another guy, you know, I didn't get through a whole lot of App State offensive line film this year. Wasn't on my radar. Neither was Raymond Vahasik. So, like, they took a bunch of dudes that just didn't happen to be on my radar. I did 343 players this year, but you know, I think those positions are positions of value and decent dart throws to make late in the draft. And then Derek Parrish is a fun pick. You know, they see him as, I think, as a fullback. He got announced as a running back. He was at the Shrine Bowl. Fun player to kind of be around and see how he interacted with the coaches. Good athlete, just kind of trying to do whatever he can as a guy that played edge at Houston, maybe making that switch to fullback at the next level. We'll see what he can do. But this draft gets a C+ for me. If they didn't steal Antonio Johnson and Parker Washington, this would have been like a D+. I hate what they did on day 2. I cannot defend those picks. Anton Harrison's a good pick. I don't think it's like the most exciting A grade ever, but I see their, you know, process there. I think the value's there. Another reach in there in the 4th round as well, in my opinion, on Tyler Lacey. So definitely a lot to be critical of, but you could still walk out of here with a starting safety, a starting tackle, a good slot receiver. It's not the worst draft in the world, but I think they definitely could have done better. So a C+ for the Jags. And then we got the Tennessee Titans. Not quite as many picks to get into on this one, just 6. But some really exciting ones, man. I love what the Titans did. I can't believe Titans fans are being critical of this draft, man. You get Peter Skoronski at 11, which is outstanding. The Titans now have, some flexibility on that offensive line. I would play Skoronski at right tackle or left, but I would fail him at tackle before you move him into guard. But either way, I think he's going to be a quality starter for them. The highest floor, I'm not going to say that. I just love Paris Johnson so freaking much. But the second highest floor out of any offensive lineman in this draft in Peter Skoronski. I don't really know how you argue with that. The only other thing was it was risky in my mind to pass on Will Levis, because for him to fall to you at 11, I thought was good. But hey, guess what? They move up and get him at the top of the second round. And this is where we're going to talk about Will Levis, really. Dude, I understand that you're scared of his tape and you're scared that he puts mayo in his coffee. The hate went way too far on Levis, even from the NFL point of view. And I think we are just seeing teams being much more cautious with drafting quarterbacks. Like last year, these guys fell too. Now, this isn't like last year where these guys were falling into the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. This was a weird draft. There was only 31 first-round picks. There were guys like Brian Branch and Joey Porter that didn't go in the first round. It just didn't work out for Will Levis to get taken in the first. But I think it's pretty obvious. Like, the Titans really liked Will Levis. They traded up to get him, and he went with the 33rd pick in the draft. So this idea that the NFL hated him and he's not a first-round prospect, or at least not a quarterback worthy of going in the first round, I still think that's reaching to confirm the narrative that he's a bad quarterback. And maybe I'm just talking myself into this too much, but for me, I think Minnesota should have taken him at 23. It sounds like there were teams like the Titans that were trying to get back up into the first round, by the way. Again, it just didn't work out for Levis to go there. But this is a great situation for Will Levis, and I really hope he proves guys wrong. The hate on him is insane. He has a rocket arm. He reads defenses way better than people, I think, give him credit for. They were throwing disguised coverages at him. He's getting through his progressions, and he had no time to operate. The Titans don't have the best offensive line in the league, so it could be better, but he's going to step in and be used to being under pressure right away. I don't think you can really say that about the other 3 quarterbacks. But they also have a whole year to get that offensive line up to speed, figure out where Skoronski fits, see if Andre Dillard can play, see if some of these other guys they've invested in can develop in time. So this window is perfect. This is exactly what I was saying about the Vikings. You have your Kirk Cousins, your Tannehill. You should know, ideally we can find an opportunity to get out of this purgatory, and they've been looking for it. But they're doing it without jeopardizing their team's season. I think people are way too down on how good this Titans defense is going to be. They're way too down or forgetful of how much Mike Vrabel has made from really nothing. They were competing for the AFC South with Josh Dobbs in the final game of last year, after their entire team got injured. So if they can just stay a little bit healthy, I think they're still going to compete this year with Tannehill and with this defense. And hopefully, that'll allow Treylon Burks to develop into the player that you're going to need him to be for Will Levis. Maybe you can get this offensive line put together a little bit more, right? So, I really like the timeline for Will Levis. I love the culture fit, the chip on his shoulder that he's going to be able to come into the NFL with. I think he's got a very good chance of becoming a high-end quality starter. I don't know if he's ever going to be elite. He's got accuracy issues. I don't love his pocket presence in general. And his playmaking instincts, but in this system too, with the play action and the classic Ryan Tannehill, snap your head around, attack the middle of the field. That's where Will Levis was at his best. So this is a steal to me. If they took him at 11, I would have given it an A, maybe even a steal. I really am fond of this pick, and I'm stunned that Titans fans are down on it. Because, dude, you're not going to be bad enough with Mike Vrabel to be looking at Caleb Williams and Drake May. It's just not going to happen. So to get Will Levis where they did after also improving the O-line for him, I don't know how, whatever happens after that, I don't think really matters. You get Tyjae Spears in the 3rd. Good value to me. There were some reports that the knee stuff is pretty bad, and I think he has torn two ACLs. So maybe he won't get a second contract in Tennessee. We'll see. I really hope he does. I'm a huge fan of Tyjae Spears' game, And if not for the injury stuff, like this is an incredible fit. He can be the third down back to Derrick Henry, who notoriously is just not much of a route runner, not much of an impact in the receiving game unless you're throwing him a screen. But Tyjae Spears can legit run routes, elusive out of the backfield. You watch what he did at the Senior Bowl. He was dotting up linebackers with some of his whip routes and out routes and stuff. So, like, he's going to do that for you right away. And then I love how he fits as a potential Derrick Henry replacement. I think he's got starter upside. My high-end pro comp for him is Aaron Jones. So I think as long as he can stay healthy with those knees being a question mark, you're getting great value in a running back in the mid to late third round there. Day 3 was fine. Josh Wiley, I didn't really see it. Looked really tight. If you're going to gamble on a 6'7" tight end, dude, take Zach Kuntz, man. Like, I think they're going to regret that. I even think if they wanted a good, like, complementary piece to Chigokonkwo, Davis Allen is a better, like, you know, Josh Wiley theoretically is supposed to be a good contested catch guy. That's kind of what he is really best at. I mean, he's fast for his size, but he's not as fast as Zach Kuntz. But Davis Allen's an awesome contested catch guy, much better than Josh Wiley. So, you know, there's a couple other tight ends that I thought they probably should have gone with. I don't really see it with Josh Wiley. I could very much be wrong, but that was my evaluation. I'm just being honest about it. Jalen Duncan, a good developmental tackle in the 6th round. I'm glad I kind of called my shot. People were asking, what do you think of Jalen Duncan in 3rd round, 4th round? I'm like, no, that's pretty damn rich. Like, you know, you get into the 6th, 7th, he's got athletic tools, but not an ounce of play strength. I think he's the weakest offensive tackle in this draft. But for the wide zone stuff they want to run, maybe he could play guard. They've had some success with the Corey Levins of the world and guys that don't have the best play strength. And we'll see what their scheme ultimately looks like this year. They might be transitioning a little bit away from the wide zone stuff, but I think it's going to be tough for them to get away from that with Ryan Tannehill and how much success they've had there. So, you know, there might be something there in Jalen Duncan. I think it's a good pick that late. And then Colton Dowell's fun, man. He was actually on my radar. Great testing numbers. This guy's a freak athlete, man. Like, he isn't that far behind like what DK Metcalf was just as an athlete. Now, I couldn't get any UT Martin tape. Couldn't find a highlight reel on this guy. I have no idea if he's any good. I'm just being honest. But the athletic profile alone is totally worth it. And a hometown guy from UT Martin, I think it's a really fun pick. He's got upside with those physical tools. And he was productive, by the way, at UT Martin. He had over 1,000 yards. Sometimes you see these guys, they're freak athletes, but they only put up 300 or 400 yards. It's like, all right, well, what was going on? Like, no, he was putting up against his level of competition. So I think that's good process to bring him in that late. Overall, I freaking love this draft, man. I think the Titans couldn't have asked for a better draft for them because you knew that O-line was such a need, but they also are in total quarterback purgatory with Ryan Tannehill right now, and they answered both those questions. I think they made some good picks after that as well. So to me, this screams A. And I don't understand why I'm seeing a lot of Titans fans criticizing this draft. I really think they freaking crushed it. So there's your AFC South. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Drop your comments down below where you agree, where you disagree. We've got one more of these coming tomorrow. Thank you, NFC South fans, for your patience. Please do hit that like button on the way out. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you soon. Peace out.